are today with John Lanterman. He is helping us open our newest exhibit, Lens to the Landscape. He's featuring his photography, and John's going to tell us a little bit about his show and the photography that is featured here at the Trotta Pioneers Museum. Welcome, John.
Well, thanks, Katie. And first, I just want to say thanks to everybody for coming and visiting the show and supporting the heritage and history of Routt County through this show. And there's a lot to see here, and by way of a little introduction to tell you just a little bit about myself. I am based here in Steamboat Springs, and my photography work really is about documenting the West and the real West. Subject range is pretty broad, from grand landscapes, and by that I mean really broad vistas to kind of capture the essence and scale of our landscape here. Historic buildings, details of nature, so all the way from the very broad view down to very specific details. And the people that call this region home. The exploration, my work, also is set against this. There's constant change, both cultural and environmental, and my job is to help capture a moment of that and just a glimpse into that. In the big picture of my work is that hopefully you'll really come to love the West, see it through slightly different eyes, and hopefully protect both the landscape and cultural heritage of the West. So there are a couple themes that you might see emerge in my work. As I mentioned earlier, the vastness of the West, also the solitude, and just the overpowering beauty are all, as I view my work and as I continue to do this, those are themes that I see coming up again and again.
Can you tell us a little bit, John, about what drew you to photography and what's your background?
Yeah, that's a good story. In looking back on that, ever since I was a small child, I'd sneak my dad's camera out and I'd go on hikes. I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, and we lived just outside of town in the mountains, and I'd always be exploring and taking pictures, and even on trips I'd do the same thing. I'd sneak his camera out and just take pictures. And it was interesting for me to be able to look back on that. And then through my career, I'm actually trained as a landscape architect. And throughout my career, I did a variety of projects, and part of my job was to go out and document those projects. So I got to incorporate my love of photography through that kind of arc of my professional career. And I taught at the University of Colorado for a long time and got to integrate my photography in different classes and studios that I taught. And then, and I also have a long history in the Valley. I first worked here in the late 70s. I've been skiing here since the late 60s. And when my wife and I had the opportunity to come back here full time, it was great. And I'm now getting to pursue my true love of photography. And just opportunities like this, to have a show at the museum, is just a great opportunity for me, and I'm so happy to be able to do this and to share my work with everybody. And just by way of information, my work's also on display at the Depot Gallery. So that's a little bit about my background and what brought me to Steamboat and also back to photography.
How did you select the sites to visit to create this show?
Well, when I first was in conversation with the museum about doing this exhibit, it was, okay, what would you like the emphasis to be on this show? And given the vision and goals of the museum, it became clear pretty quickly that the work should really reflect the culture and history and heritage of the Valley. So that was easy because that's what I do, and I just love this valley so much. And I understand the valley and know it fairly well. So to get out and to choose these images, I wanted to strike a balance between the buildings and the stories that they might tell from the past inhabitants, all the way to some of the landscapes that really speak to the nature and quality of the environment in the Yampa Valley and in Routt County. And to choose these images, oftentimes I would go out and something would catch my eye, and I'd stop and study it and work on it to capture images. And in other cases, as I've gotten to know more people in the valley and pursued this, there were specific buildings and places that deserved to be part of the story of the Yampa Valley. And I do want to say, even though there are a total of 39 images in this exhibit, there were many more, and this is by no way an exhaustive overview of every historic building or landscape in the county. I had to really edit back and just choose what I believe may be beginning to capture the essence of where we are. So in some cases, I have specific places or areas that I wanted to include, such as the Carpenter Ranch and Ferry Carpenter, and that came from reading a great book called Nothing Daunted about the history of this valley. In other cases, to look at Perry Mansfield, because that's, to me, such an integral part of the arts and the history of this valley that should have a place. And so then, and there are a number of other ranches, like the Fetchers and the Stanko Ranch and the Gay Ranch and other places that should be part of this story. So I'd go out and I'd spend time talking with people and taking images. Sometimes it would be one visit, and I'd capture the essence of what I wanted to find there. In other cases, there's some, especially some landscapes that I visited many, many times before this exhibit was in anybody's mind, and I'd revisit some of those places early morning, late afternoon. The light's always changing, the clouds, the sky. So sometimes it would be fairly quick, and other times, it would take many, many visits to really capture what spoke to me and hopefully speaks to you about the area and the images.
Do you always work in black and white?
I am very attracted to black and white, and most of my images are in black and white, over 90%, and I just am really infatuated with that. And again, that might get back to my childhood. I would study Ansel Adams and Eisenstadt and just black and white, and it just moves me. I just love it and the essence of what it brings, and it also helps me to train my eye to see in black and white and the contrast and the forms that are at play. And I just love some ways it's simple and in other ways it's not, but I just really love how black and white images speak to me. So that's why all the images in this exhibit are black and white. So
and it makes these historical places seem even more timeless and captured, because it really could be from the last 100 years. They almost look like, when you don't have kind of color or modern things to help ground you. So when did you take these images?
All the images in this exhibit were taken in the last 2 to 3 years, with the majority of them being within the last year, I would say. So that's an interesting point, how that black and white, because of course the first images and first people in this valley and the first people in the Rocky Mountains, they were capturing these landscapes and places in black and white. So in that way it fits. So yeah, it works. Yeah.
About how many pictures do you take until you find the one that then makes it to the wall?
That's a really good question, and that varies tremendously. Sometimes it's maybe studying something and it's a half dozen or a dozen images and the lighting happened to be just right, or I just got really lucky and everything worked out. And other times, like I was saying, I need to revisit a place many, many times, and then the images just kind of evoke a slightly different emotion. So then that's my role to choose which one connects with me and display that. For instance, there's some images of the Stanko Ranch, and I'd been kind of following the phases of the moon, and I went out there late in the afternoon, and I got really lucky with some of the images that I liked also had the moon, but that just happened to be the case with that.
Can you tell when you're out in the field, like, ooh, this was a good, I really captured something? Or is it not till you get back home and you start reviewing your film roll, so to speak, that they come out?
It's both. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when I'm going back home, I feel really good and like I've got something and I know. Other times I'm completely surprised.
Right?
And I had no idea, but then I see it and it's like, oh. And I see things in those images that I didn't even see when I was out. Like if it wasn't for a specific image I was looking for or a specific subject, if I was just out and something catches my eye, I might not even know what that is. And I'll really work an area from different angles, and like I said, the light's always changing. And then I'll get back and see, but I might be driving down a road going to one place because the light's dropping and it's changing quickly. I want to get something, and all of a sudden something catches my eye and I'll never get to where I was originally going. It's that image. A good example that you'll see in this display, Taylor Ranch entry out on Route County Road 42. I was going down that road, the sun was very low, but something caught my eye, so I stopped, I parked the car, I got out, and I started taking pictures. And I just loved some of the angles, and like I was saying, the light was very low and catching a building in a way that I liked. And it wasn't until I got back and really studied these images, I caught the moon, and also there were a number of cloud formations in the sky that were all kind of in sympathy with some of the lines that were taking us to the main focal point of the image. So, to be honest, sometimes I get lucky, and or it's at a subconscious level. I don't even know.
Yeah.
So,
do you do a lot of editing at home? Like, oh, this power line is in my way, and I'll just remove it.
That's a good question. If there's something, I'm not above. Like if there's something that's totally distracting, but it doesn't take away from the essence, or I'm not manipulating it in a way to tell a different story than what's there, I will, if there's a big transformer box or something, or if there's some power lines, I might edit those out. And at the same time, if that transformer or the power line add to the story I want to tell, I'll absolutely leave it. Mm-hmm. But I'm not big on manipulating and really changing in the image.
Yeah.
Because they really need to stand on what's really there.
Yeah.
This is the image I was just talking about, Taylor Ranch. And as you can see in this, again, these are all black and white. What caught my eye at the time was the leading line of the fence and the trees, and just light at the very end of the day was highlighting the front of this structure. But even the tips of the trees were still highlighted, and that's what made me stop and pursue this image. And then the treat, my little gift when I got back and I was studying this, is it's like, oh, here's the moon. That's a real plus. And even all the leading lines that reinforce the fence and the trees, the clouds are even bringing you down to the focal point of that image. So that's one example there. This is the Rock Creek stage stop on Gore Pass. And I looked at this, the lighting was good in the afternoon. I love big skies and the clouds and the depth that brings. And to capture this image, it's like, what's the story and how can you begin to capture the first settlers or early visitors to the Yampa Valley? They came over Gore Pass in a stagecoach, and this was a stop. So to begin to think about that and to have people think about that, I set the building to be a fairly small element in the landscape, but I also brought the road. It's a gravel road that you can follow over here, and to capture the S of that in the background, to kind of bring to life just a little more the essence of travel and people coming in to this grand landscape and the unknown that lay ahead of them. So that's, the story behind that specific image. And it also begins to tell a little more of the backstory of what the stage stop is about. And that gets to a bigger piece of my work, that is, if people understand something better and they love it, they learn about it, they're going to take better care of it. And that's behind my work, is for us to see things through a slightly different lens, see things differently, and maybe come to love that area a little more and to help protect it and to be stewards of the landscape. This image is of the Wheeler Ranch on County Road 44. Something I spoke about earlier that's in my mind a lot of the time when I'm out taking pictures is this idea of change, the cultural and environmental change, and the old versus the new. And this is an example of that. Wheeler Ranch with the Elk River behind it, historic structure, and also capturing the ski area in the background. So that's kind of this juxtaposition of the old and the new, in reminding people of the forces that are at work, of historical preservation versus the influx of visitors and new residents that love this valley, and maybe they're first drawn here to ski or whatever, or for the clean air, or for the the fishing in the clear rivers in the Yampa or Elk or wherever. So this hopefully is a little bit of a reminder that there are a lot of forces at play right now, and that we need to be aware of those and really preserve and protect what we have and what brought people to the valley. Part of this project is also to capture these places and the subject matter today, in 2020. And this is a good example up at Perry Mansfield. There is such a history from the early 1900s of Perry Mansfield and its role in the arts in the valley, but also nationally. And so to capture it, it's like, what's that mean today? We're in a pandemic, and it's limited the performing arts considerably. And so what's the story? Perry Mansfield, normally very busy, bustling place in the summer, with training and bringing students in from all over the country to learn here. So this image caught my attention. It's one of the earliest cabins up at Perry Mansfield, but it also frames an old chair that's empty. And to me, it's like it's waiting. like so many performers are waiting, not only to come to Perry Mansfield, but to get back on stage and to be performing. So this, to me, captures a sense of Perry Mansfield today, while at the same time reflecting the history of Perry Mansfield. This image, I have a series, couple series, and one of them's of the Stanko Ranch out on 20 Mile Road. And this image it has the moon again in the sky, which was kind of an added bonus. But this is a detail of the blacksmith shop out at on the Stanko Ranch. And some of the images I pulled back, the one we were just looking at of the stage stop, to really capture the landscape and this building's place in that. In other cases, for interest and I really came in and just am showing a detail of the wood and the grain on the wood, again with the background, but just to be graphically interesting also. But again, this is really telling the story of the history through the materials and the forms, and how over time they've taken care of this building, and it's still there and part of the heritage of the Yampa Valley. Another series that I wanted to include in this is the Carpenter Ranch. And this image it's a large image on canvas. And when I first arrived on the first day to take images, I came off Highway 40, I was driving in, and there were clouds, and the light was low in the sky, but the clouds were moving quickly. And so I stopped, I just wanted to get a sense of the area. And then I saw how the light and the shadows were playing against the hills in the background. And then I was patient. And again, there are a number of images of this, and I waited until the sun was just highlighting the historic barn on the property, and also catching some of the trees, the cottonwoods along the Yampa River down there. One of the reasons the Nature Conservancy bought this and manages the Carpenter Ranch is because of some pretty unique ecological systems that are at play, and plants that are, it's pretty unusual for them to be together. So those are all kind of stories behind the image, but those were all on my mind when I captured this specific image. One of the great things about having this show at the museum, and something that I have been very enthusiastic about during the whole time of putting this exhibit together, is getting to work with people at the museum, and they've been extremely supportive. Candace has been great, Katie's been great, and also I've been working with Sherry Daschel, who's done extensive research on all of the places that are in this exhibit. And so not only is this about the capturing these places in photographs, but because of the role of the museum and what they do, there's research, and you can go in and learn something about all the places, all the buildings that are part of this show, and that you will walk away with more than having seen, hopefully, what you'll find are nice photographs and what captured the quality and begin to tell the story of this valley. But there's specifics you'll learn about. You can learn about, as I said, when the stage stop was built, or some of the history behind some of the ranches that are in the valley as well. And so I want to really thank the museum for hosting this exhibit, and also for all their support in putting it together, and then in the story that they're telling about this valley. So thank you very, very much for the opportunity to do this. And having said that, this show is opening first Friday, August 7th, 2020, and it'll be open they'll be letting limited amount of people through. They're being very aware of the pandemic, and so wearing masks and all that, and they're going to limit people coming in. But the show will be open, and we really hope that you come and visit either on First Friday or at a future date when it's open to the public. And you can find out about that and opening dates by visiting their website of treadofpioneers.org. The images in the show will be available to purchase, and and you can just contact me about that. If you want one of the original exhibit prints, you can purchase those ahead of time, but they will not be available to pick up till after the show closes in 2021. And also, as part of this, in order to help support the work of the museum and others in the Valley, 30% of all proceeds from any sales of these images will be distributed equally between Tread of Pioneers Museum, Historic Route County, and also the Nature Conservancy. So any purchases will really go to help support all the great work that's being done in the Valley by those organizations.
Thank you, John.
Thank you so much. This has been so fun. I've enjoyed it immensely.